Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hello, Rush Nation, and welcome along here to another Flagship show. I'm back. Feeling rather casual slaps on the sofa today, but Murf, how are you, mate? You all right? Sat at your desk a bit better than I am.
Yeah, I don't feel casual today. It's been an absolute mental one. I'm just catching up on life. I've been so far out for so long. And I didn't really realize how sick I was really over the last 6 months. I've been trying to play catch up with my life. Yep. And then work's just so, my day job's so busy at the moment. So it's literally crazy right now, which is good. Busy's good for me, but it's a lot on.
Busy means money, yeah.
And it's also been busy with fire. So
it's been a bit of a week, right? Yeah.
It's been a massive week, really. One I'm massively excited about. There's been some sad moments and some good moments, and we'll get onto that in just a second. But it's been a week, and it's been a bit of a year really with 5 Yard. It's been difficult to start. My health. You've been busy with a lot of things and work, and you've had health challenges as well, and then. Rich leaving Dynasty, which is off to go do his own venture, which is amazing. And obviously fully support Rich and thankful for everything he's done. And him and Tom are doing an amazing job. Yep. But obviously losing him and then, we'll get on to some more bits and pieces. It's just been a bit of a bit of a time. But I think there's going to be some exciting news that we're going to drop. I'm really excited about. And then I think on top of that, I think we're just going through what I put as a new frontier. I think it's... I don't want to call it a reboot or a rebrand or anything like that. I just think we're going to go into something very exciting, and I can't wait for the new frontier and seeing what happens.
So why don't we start there then? Why don't you give us a bit more insight to that teaser you've just had?
Yes, it's quite a bit. So let's start at the top. So, as people who've been listening to this pod for quite a while, if you haven't, and this is your first pod, and listen, there's sometimes new people that join every week, right? Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is, I don't know, episode 704, 705. It's something like that. We've dropped a lot of content over the years. And I'm thankful to everybody who's ever listened, whether you listened to one or all of them. But if you are new, welcome. We're a UK-based fantasy football podcast. And we do lots of different podcasts as well. And a while ago, we did a college football podcast, which kind of started with, Ash and Stocks and Tom and those guys kind of were doing it. And there's some writers, and then it kind of abruptly ended. Tom, with his day job, had to pull away. Ash had loads of commitments, Stocks, loads of commitments. It just didn't really happen. So it kind of just stopped. And there's more need for college content, I think, not just a need from just enjoyment perspective, but also from a fantasy football perspective and seeing those rookies and those young players coming through. And I think
college football here is something that isn't tapped into enough in the UK. It's because it's so confusing, big, convoluted from the outside that it's a specialist thing. And I think a load of NFL fans would like to know more. You just look at it and go, I don't know where to start. And then therefore you don't look at it. And I think...
No. And I think it's a growing thing, and I think it's people are ready for college football. I don't think there's a lot of content in the UK. I think there is some content, and the content that does go out is very good. Full 10 Yards College did and still do. Lee Wakefield does an amazing job in breaking down. We've had loads of people. Ollie Hodgkinson of Pro Football Network. He does a phenomenal job in his breakdown of rookies, and we've had him on the show, and we'll get him back for sure. And probably tap him up to come on in the next couple of weeks to talk a little bit. And I think there's some excellent college writers out there in the UK. Ben Isaacs is another one, by the way, especially for what he does on that King's podcast. But I think for us, it's been a missing niche. We had people listening. It was a decent content piece that we had our unique audience there for people who perhaps didn't play much fantasy football but wanted that college. So the good news is it's coming back. We're going to have a new face heading it up. It's a familiar face to some of you in the UK fantasy football community. So Neil Simmons, aka Simo, who runs British Fantasy Football League. He runs a league of about 128 GMs. I think it is now. You and I both are in it. Some of us are in a higher division than others.
Some of us are the most successful organisation of the 128.
Yeah, but you're playing a kiddie league, so
because you joined first, no prizes for that.
Not just joined first, I've recruited half the league.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you did. You did. I don't think we spoke much at the time, but yeah, you did. Yeah.
I recruited half the league. But anyway, that's besides the point. But anyway, Simo is joining us. And he's going to head up college. He's going to bring in some content creators, and they're going to do a pod. So the pod's going to come back in a few weeks. Neil's actually recovering from knee surgery. So first of all, get well soon, buddy. He had that yesterday. The knee surgery was a success. So I know you're watching, and I know that you are probably just a little bit out of it right now. But so it's going to be a few weeks. Stacey's trying to defend.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Stacey.
Stacey, come on, mate. Listen, he doesn't need defending. He's a big boy. He can look after himself in his kiddie league. So listen, great news about Simo. Really excited to see what he's going to do. It's going to be a few weeks, but we are going to reboot it. So be up and running before the draft for sure. Here he is. He's here. He's really excited to have Simo on board, and I'll let him in his due course announce his plans and what he's going to be doing there. So first of all, bringing college back is incredibly exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do through the season. And yes, okay, it's a bit of a strange time with the draft coming. It's a lot of focus now, and they'll add some context to some of those draft players. But really, I think looking ahead to 2023-24, who are the big players? We're hearing Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be obviously a big name to watch next year. And there's going to be some good quarterbacks to look at next year as well. So seeing those guys produce that content is going to be great. And it's a good time to introduce it, as there is a bit of a focus on the college game right now with the draft. Next change.
Welcome,
Simo. Yeah.
Get well soon.
Rest up, mate, and feel better. And then we did have some sad news this week in the family that you might have seen if you follow Liam on Twitter, host of the Dynasty podcast. He's decided to make a step away from content creation altogether. He's just kind of, lost. Content creation's hard.
It's a labor of love, right?
It is a labor of love. You don't get paid. There's no money in this for people like us. I don't take a dime. You don't take a dime. We do this for passion, for love, and there's some hard days. And when you grind for as long as some of us have, and Liam in particular, it can get to a point where you kind of lose a little bit of passion for it. And he's made that decision to step away for a bit, which I 100% believe if that's the right decision. There's no point plowing on if you're not feeling it, and to make a decision on what's going on. And he's made a lot of life changes recently for the positive. I'm not going to share those because that's down to him, but it's not that he's not in a good place in his life. It's just he's made a decision that there's other things going on. And
you've got to want to sit and write. You've got to want to sit and come on here. And if that want isn't there right now, and Liam's a great guy. He's very good at what he does, and I hope he gets it back if that's what he chooses to do. But having a break from time to time is not a bad thing.
And I think it's hard, and I've been in Liam's seat, right, where you lose your podcast host, right? And I'm very lucky that you stepped in when I lost stocks, because I think it's hard when you're on your own and you're trying to think about what you want to do and who you're going to get to chip in and help and share that. And if it's just you, it's a bit of an uphill struggle at times, and it is hard. And especially if you haven't got that co-host to bounce ideas of and do things with. So, Liam's made that decision, and that's, the door's always open for Liam. He's always welcome to come back. And there wasn't anything, he dropped me a message last week, and it's just the way it's happened. And I wish Liam all the best. And I know at some point he will come back to this because he's too good not to. But he's taking his time to do what he wants to do, what he needs to do and want to do. So wish Liam really well. And I'm gutted that he, has made that decision, but he has, and I fully support it. And we're here to help, and we remain good friends and look forward to seeing him at the UK FFC in July. But that does mean that we need a dynasty host, right? So we need someone to head up because it is a popular time of year. And if you're really eagle-eyed this week, you would have seen that someone in particular has changed their dynasty or their handle on Twitter and therefore on this screen. So it's a great pleasure for me to announce that Dan is going to be heading up the dynasty team starting from next week. So first of all, from me, a massive congratulations. This was, I mean, we had conversations. We talk a lot anyway, but we had conversations through the week, and it just felt right immediately. And as soon as you put your name forward, you're someone who I've podded with for the last 18 or so months, but someone I've known for longer than that as well. And I know you're going to do a phenomenal job.
Thank you, mate.
I'm really excited to see what you produce.
Me too.
And I can't wait to see what happens. So tell us a little bit about the plan that is going to be the Dynasty show moving forward from next week.
Yeah, I just figured that having a family, 2 young kids, a team of staff, a job where I worked 6 days wasn't enough to take on. So let's chuck some more into it and see how that pans out. I don't know. Somebody bring me to my senses quickly. No, I don't know. Look, I love the Dynasty side of it. I love redraft football, but I also like the longevity of a dynasty. I like the payback for things that come off. I like I'm a salesman by trade. I have been for 20 years. I like the negotiating of a trade. I like the value optimization, seeing what you can get and what you don't. And you can see things different ways. A trade that's bad now might be great in 3 years. And it's about all different tweaks and twerks. And it just adds a whole nother level of things to analyze into it, I guess. So the opportunity was there. I spoke to yourself, said, hey, I'd like to take it on. But I wanted some help, as you've just said, doing it on your own. And Liam has struggled is hard. So for those of you that know, and she's been on here before, I've reached out to Hannah Rowland. And Hannah Rowland will be joining me on the Dynasty pod. So we're going to have myself and Hannah. Hannah's a little busy right now with her outside work. So I think she's going to pop on from May. So I've got to fudge it until May, let's say. The busiest time of the year, rookie NFL draft season. We'll figure something out, I'm sure. But a team of writers are there. I'll probably look to add a writer or 2 more so we can keep the content coming on all forms. But to copy what Rich and Liam created, I think feels a little foolhardy to try and replicate. So we're going to have a look. We're going to start from the beginning. I'd like to get some people on board that are new to it as well, whether it be content creation or dynasty, and kind of all go on this journey together and learn a little bit together. And we're going to strip it right back to basics, get out maybe less content than what people were familiar with, but I want to keep the quality there, importantly, and keep that going. So I'm excited. It's a new challenge. I've got visions for it. Me and Hannah and Andy, one of the writers, sit down and talk and some what we want to achieve and where we want to go. So yeah, as of next Tuesday, I won't be here from next week. This will be my last flagship show as a host until Murf bothers to invite me as a guest, I guess.
Well, you're always welcome back anytime you want to gate.
I'll just be logging in on a Monday night now.
Mate, I was going to say, if you have it, you're always welcome back anytime.
It gets me out putting the kids to bed on a Monday, so I love it.
Well, there you go. Well, mate, you've got an open-ended invitation. Anytime you want to come back, awesome. It's there, right? So,
but no, Tuesdays from 8, we'll be going live as everyone's used to with the Dynasty show.
So no show tomorrow, and there was no show last week. As Liam sort of let us know last week that it just, we'd run its course for him. So it does mean that there's no show this week. That's fine. But from next week, there will be a show back to that's it. So as we gear up to look, Hannah's here.
Well. Okay, Hannah, you're meant to be working. You tell me you can't pod, but you can sit there and listen to it.
It's good to have you on board, Hannah, as well. So really exciting. It's going to be a strong team. Looking forward to seeing further changes that you announce, and again, anybody who's interested in writing content, reach out to Dan on his new handle, and give that a check out, and make sure Hannah, reach out to Hannah as well, and have a chat with them and make sure that everything's good there. So new frontiers. So we've got new college pod, a re-engineered Dynasty show with new heads, and it does mean that there's a vacancy.
Rob's going to be busy doing all our intro graphics, isn't he?
I know, and Lee as well. Yeah, going to be redone. So have to get that sorted. It does mean that, yeah, as you said, you're leaving the flagship, which is bittersweet for me. Obviously, we've known each other for a long time, and we've been podding for 18 months, and you build a special relationship with someone, and for me, I don't like change, so it's tough because for me, I had stocks, and then I lost stocks, and then I've got you, and
you just get familiar.
Just we break that stride, and the problem is I need someone who keeps me in check, because otherwise I just go on and on. That's what I said to you in the week.
It's not easy. We spoke about that. No, I've got better at it over the time. No, you not easy.
People unfortunately sometimes just let me go, and they're like, "It's Murf, okay, it's fine. He's the big powerhouse." So he's like, we just let him talk, and it's not necessarily great audio. So basically, there's therefore going to be a change to the flagship show as a result of all these changes. First thing is to say that there will be a change in day at some point. So the next few weeks, I'm going to roll with some guests. I'm going to have to call in some friends of mine who are going to roll with me.
I know somebody who's now free on a Monday night. Nothing to
do. Well, you can come back anytime. You can come and chip in and help me out. But yeah, we're going to have some guests on as we get into draft month and start analysing a bit more. And so looking forward to that. But I do have a host, a long-term solution in mind, and we got to iron out the day. So we're going to move, the long-term solution. So we do have a new host coming in, and we'll choose a day, and we're going to get it sorted by sort of April. But I'm pleased to announce that, as I said, I don't like change, and I've gone through 2 podcast hosts, and I'm not breaking in a third.
You see the common denominator here.
Exactly. Well, I'm not breaking in a third. So I'm pleased to announce that Stocks is coming back to the 5 Yard Rush show. It's been a long time going. Now, if you haven't heard Stocks on the show, go listen to our Super Bowl show. Him and I do the opening segment of that, and
he'll keep you in check.
Stocks and I, he won't take any crap from me. So Stocks and I podded for the better part of 4+ years. The first 4 years of this show was me and him. It was actually, 5 Yard was his. It was his podcast. It wasn't mine. He started the podcast with his mate. His mate left. Yep. I stepped in, and then basically, became the loudmouth of the show, and then took it on after Stocks left. And Stocks has always been in the background. He's always been contributing bits and pieces down the college show, editing, all sorts of things. But he's come back, and I'm really excited. So as much as it's really sad to lose you, Dan, it feels right to have him back. And
he's the only one that could replace me, let's face it.
He was the only one that could replace you because you replaced him. So, as I said, I'm not breaking a third podcast host in. That's it now. I
don't know who this is.
I think this is Stocks. I think it's got to be. So I hope so. If it's not, I'll be embarrassed. But yeah, so Stocks has come back. I can't wait for him to come back and do this. So it'll be a few weeks. We're going to iron out the details, and I'll share them when he's back. So appreciate we've taken up nearly 20 minutes to go through all these changes. It's quite a lot, obviously, of change for us, but it all positive news, obviously, with the exception of Liam leaving. Everything else is really positive. So new college pod coming in the next few weeks. Figured it was Stocks. So new college pod coming back.
How to host the show. Got to learn again. Got to relearn the ropes.
Listen, no, he doesn't. He's been pulling the string from behind the curtain for years, right? So having Stocks back, you moving to Dynasty, Hannah joining the Dynasty team, everything's just, it feels great. It all fell into place amazingly.
Things happen for a reason, my man.
All different conversations were all kind of going parallel in different motions at the same time, and they all kind of slotted in. So really pleased to announce all the new lineup. Please give everybody a follow on the Twitter machine, and someone else saying great.
So that's not Stocks.
No, because he doesn't use himself in the third person. So lots of changes. Reach out to everybody, say hello. If you want to write content, get in touch with us. So I appreciate that. That's taking a bit of time, but as I'm sure you can imagine, it's obviously a massive change for us, and it's a massive change for everything we're doing, but it's going to be really
seems
exciting.
Pretty well received.
Yeah, it does. And I'm excited for for what we bring in the next. So bear with us the next couple of weeks. Might be a little bit rocky as people are sort of transitioning in and coming in and learning the tech. But we are going to continue through. And as we get through draft season and into the new season, it's exciting times. I think before we get into the main topic we're going to talk about today, there has obviously been a big piece of NFL news that has dropped today that Lamar Jackson has requested a trade. So he has requested a trade. Doesn't seem to be too much of a surprise that he's requested a trade. He's obviously not getting the money that he's expecting from the Ravens. So he's obviously
be surprised to see it being a bargaining tool.
I think it's a bit of both. I think he would stay for the right offer. I don't think this is a terminal thing. Nope. I just think they're too far apart. And I think he's saying, if you're not going to, if you're not going to meet my price, then I am going to go. I want to go. And I think that's only fair. Where he goes, it's hard to see. The immediate sort of interest you would say would be the Colts. Washington would be the two that you would say probably in the driving seat here. I wouldn't rule out Tampa if they can do something this year where it's cheap. I think it's unlikely. I wouldn't sit here and say that they're like hot on the press.
There's got to be 27 teams interested in Lamar Jackson on the open market.
Former MVP, right? So I think there's got to be most teams, unless you're sitting there as you say, probably half a dozen teams. I think you've got to be looking at this. It wouldn't shock me if Carolina got into this. I know they got the one pick. It would. Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't shock me if there were a lot of teams in here that were looking to get involved in this sweepstakes. So I think this is a story it's going to rumble on. It wouldn't shock me that you might see this resolved by the draft, maybe even draft night. I imagine the opening night of the draft. Lamar Jackson gets traded. Oh my God. I mean, I wouldn't like to see it because it'd be in our division. But on the flip side, I remember we all remember last year, AJ Brown getting traded.
Yes.
Like last year's draft, opening night was incredible because you had Marcus Brown traded, you had AJ Brown traded, and then the AJ Brown contract, the huge contract he got that night. Like you had all these pieces drop in, with Treylon Burks getting drafted, the wide receivers going. Like you just add that little bit of extra bite to draft night that you don't normally get. Normally it's
when was the last time the 101 was traded on the night? I can't ever recall it.
The last time, so I can tell you this. The last time the 101 was traded was
on the night.
Yeah, when the the Chargers drafted Eli Manning. So they drafted Eli Manning. The Giants took Phillip Rivers, and then they traded.
Because he refused to play.
Correct. That was the last time the 101 was traded on the night.
But so obviously
the pick was made.
Yes.
But I've read a lot about the Mannings and the trade. So the talks were going on as the picks were being made. So
obviously, it's too much time.
It wasn't agreed when
we're close here. We'll take your guy. That buys us 20 more minutes to have this discussion a bit further.
Yeah, right? I think what happened was the Chargers called Eli's bluff and they picked him, and then Eli was like, no, and then they talked and then the Giants said, okay, who do you want? And if we were to work out a deal, and they said, well, we'd take Rivers, and then okay, well, that's who we were thinking anyway as a backup, so we'll take Rivers. And then, funny enough, they both missed Ben, who was the best quarterback in the draft. But there you go. So could happen on night, could happen before. Be interesting. I think there's a few interesting scenarios with Lamar, so we'll keep that one posted. Personally, obviously, I'd love him to come to Tampa. I think it could be a really good fit.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to happen, but I would like to see that. If not, Kyle Trask season, maybe let's go. But yeah, just thought we'd share that one piece of news. Really quiet free agency this year. We talked about this last week. It's not really been. It's not been. Bobby Wagner back to the Seahawks. That feels kind of right.
Yeah.
Not bad money, but there hasn't been really any big blockbuster moves. There's not really many big
names.
Yeah, there's a few names out there.
Fournette's still about. Well, these guys can do jobs still on rosters, but
I mean, I don't want the Bucs to sign Kareem Hunt, but I have this weird feeling in the back of my head that that's something that's going to happen. But we'll see what happens there. So, going to be some time. There's definitely the running back market went flat. The wide receiver market seems to have gone quite flat as well. Yeah. So it's interesting to see what happens with the talent that's coming through with the draft in just a few weeks' time. So, as you say, 1st of April round the corner. then we're into draft season. So very, very exciting times. So with that in mind, I think it's really important that we look at 2022, right? And I wanted to, as our last show, because it just seems to feel right to have a discussion around some takeaways, right, of 2022. And I mean, higher level themes. So what are some things that happened in 2022 that means that we should be looking out for in 2023 in terms of strategy changes, the way that we approach drafts, the way that we approach the thinking of what redraft is going to be in 2023? Because I think we've seen this trend over the last couple of years with COVID and then post-COVID, and then people keep saying, "Oh, there's more injuries," and you can say that one time,
it probably is
2 times. I think there is an element of it, but I think as well, it's when it happens over 2-3 years, it's no longer just
it becomes the norm.
It's a trend, right? And then you have to think about how you adjust to that. Yeah, so we'll go from there.
He's lost himself.
Yeah, sorry.
You better, you got it?
Yeah, sorry. Just unfortunately, I forgot to mute a different channel I'm in, and so something popped up.
That's
fine.
Yeah,
apologies. Bad audio.
I mean, this all came about. We were talking, wasn't we, about first round drafts this year, right? Redraft 1 QB leagues and how it will differ from last year, effectively.
And I think that's
Stacey's picked up on something we're going to mention.
Yeah. So I think the first round is going to be interesting. And the way I'd caveat this, right, is this. I think let's caveat the conversation of there's 2 types of leagues. There's the types of leagues that you'll play in 5-yard rush leagues, very active leagues with very active players, charity tournaments with active players, people in the
home
community.
leagues.
Right. Well, so I think that, there's a distinction here between people that you play with that are obsessed with fantasy football, like us, who are complete degenerates, and then people who are more casual players, like your home leagues, like people like your friends who perhaps don't listen to this podcast or other podcasts in as much volume as perhaps you do. And so I think some of the things we'll talk about with changes, I would say I caveat that and say I think they're more likely to change in very active leagues with fantasy degenerates than they are to change with players who are more sort of average level players who sort of are more casual players, because I just think it will take probably 2 to 3 years for the casual players to catch up, because they tend to play how they always play
over the last 2 or 3 years, especially more so here in the UK, playing with British players, because the level of content and the quality of content across the board, not just at 5-yard, has improved remarkably, right?
Yeah.
So your casual fan here, your casual NFL fan that may have played in 1, 2, 3 leagues, didn't really know a lot of people. With COVID, the world become incredibly smaller. Content become a lot more available. Everyone played in more leagues and therefore spent more time on it, fell in love with it. And I think, therefore, your average demographic fantasy fan here in the UK has improved in terms of their ability at fantasy and their knowledge.
Yeah, I'd also say that we are probably good as a community, right? So I talk about
a few bad eggs.
Yeah. So I would say that, when Stocks and I got into this six-ish years ago, there were a few content creators and there were a few people who were playing fantasy and there were a few leagues. And I always said from day one, right? And if you can go back and listen, you shouldn't, but you can. I've always said that my mission was to get rid of people playing on random NFL.com leagues. Like that for me was the number one driver of doing fantasy football content. Was there shouldn't be a need for a person in the UK to have to play fantasy football, not have enough people they know to play fantasy football, and have to go into a really crappy random NFL.com league where everyone checks out. Yeah, and most of us probably did, right? And I think for me, that has to die. And I think now, and I can't take that much credit, but people jumped on that bandwagon. Jack Humphrey, and then people like yourself, Rich Cooling, Tom, and the guys at Fantasy Wildcard, and lots of other content creators have come out, and Lewis Venans and loads of people create leagues to and Simo, and so I could keep going. I'm going to stop. And loads of people who haven't shouted you, just apologies, who create leagues purely for the entertainment of other people, right? And purely to make sure that everyone has a league that they can play in and have fun and know people. And then that's allowed our community here in the UK to grow.
Yep.
And we're so lucky that we have so many people who are so selfless to put in the hours and the time and the dedication to create really fun, ingenious, different, interesting leagues, like Matt Cullen does his salary cap leagues and things like that. That are just who are just very, very different, and like those sorts of concept leagues with more strategy, more game. And I think where we are good in the UK, probably better than anywhere in the world, is because of the level of dedication you've got to be a fan. Plus the fact that we all just are complete degenerates and we all get on quite well in silo.
In the main,
yeah, we end up creating a lot of leagues and playing a lot of leagues and having a lot of fun, and that creates this fantastic community. And that's where the UK FFCC is bringing that community together even further, because it means people can come and meet live, right, rather than interacting in on screens and on WhatsApps and whatever. So this is why a caveat, this goes all the way back, we've got wealth topic, to these the people in our community that play in our community leagues. I think you're going to see a significant sea change in the first round. In your home leagues, I don't think that's going to be. And I think that sea change is going to be around the amount of running backs that will be drafted in round one. Now, you and I disagree slightly here, which is rare, because you and I don't disagree all that often on the amount of players, the amount of running backs should be drafted in round one. And
we're talking one QB redraft.
One QB redraft, right? So forget your Superflex. Superflex, obviously, the whole thing. Yeah, so, PPR, I would carry it again. Standard, I would draft more because of the way that the scoring is. But I would say half PPR or full PPR, I would be dropping the number of RBs that are acceptable to draft in round one.
Agreed.
So let's start with you.
Let's just also add this. Predominantly, last 4 or 5 years, how would you start a draft? Any draft, pretty much.
I would have started probably running back, unless there was an elite tier wide receiver. And I've talked about this in the book, from the strategy that in the books, if you read the books that I've written, that the strategy and the numbers, because of position scarcity at the running back position, it always seemed to be opportune to take running back, or running back, wide receiver, running back. But in those first 3 rounds, to take at least 2 running backs,
you need your 2 starters locked in.
Right.
And me too.
And what we are seeing now over time, especially over the last 2 years, and especially even particularly last season, is the amount of game changers at the position are decreasing. So there aren't that many game changers at the position that there used to be. So you have a very elite tier, you have another tier, and then you have a bunch of dudes. And I'm being really casual in the way I say that, by the way. But effectively, for me, there isn't that many difference makers at the position, whereas before you had 10 guys, 11 guys, 12 guys who were real separators.
You could go running back, and have 2 bell cow backs.
Right. And that's just not the case anymore. We're seeing with the usage stats, and we're seeing with the fact that more teams going to a community-based scenario, third down backs, etc., that we're not seeing the touch rates of the elite players that we were seeing 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. And that's, I think, is what's really key, is if you're not seeing those rates, then what are we doing? Like, why is the case? And, for me, I'm going to throw this question back to you. How many running backs do you feel are worthy of being in the first round right now?
I think when I said to you earlier, 5 potentially.
Okay.
In a redraft. So I think CMC, Eckler, Jonathan Taylor probably stand out at the minute. Although Jonathan Taylor, I'm not a huge fan of personally. I think if you're at the late end and you want to go with running back because of scarcity, I think you'll probably get away with Derrick Henry still being on there just because of the QB situation. And Saquon Barkley was my other one. Sorry, I missed him. I think Saquon Barkley comes into the late first. He's not there now in terms of ADP, but I think he will be ahead of someone like Dalvin Cook, who is currently ADP 12.
Who's taking Dalvin Cook at 12? Who's taking Dalvin Cook at 12? Really? Are we really in that?
I've got Sleeper's ADP up for 1 QB league currently. No. McCaffrey, Taylor, Eckler, Jefferson, Chase, Henry at 6. So that's still
who's got Henry?
6. 4 of the top 6 are running backs. This is where casual players influence ADP because there's a lot of them.
Oh, jeez. No. Right. For me, there's 3. There's 3 running backs who genuinely deserve. And they shouldn't be 1, 2, 3, but fine.
Nope, I agree with that as well. Yep.
Right.
But you can see why they're first.
I can make the argument for Eckler, for McCaffrey, and for Jonathan Taylor. I can make the argument for those 3. I wouldn't have Jonathan Taylor anywhere near 3. He would be somewhere in the back end of the first round for me. But whatever, fine.
Yep, 8 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it at 6. I don't hate it at 6 or 7, but I'm not. I don't think I'm going Jonathan Taylor higher than 6. I really don't think I am. I think for me, Jefferson, Chase have to be well above them. The other 2 running backs, and then I think you've got to look at players like AJ Brown, who's only going to get better. I think you've got to look at him up there. Tyreek Hill,
AJ Brown
Adams
is currently 16 on the ADP.
Yeah, ridiculous. Like ridiculous. He's a first round player. Like, what are we talking about?
And Devontae Adams is half that. Devontae Adams is 8.
Can we just say that AJ Brown last year was the wide receiver 6 in PPR? He got nearly 300 points, and it was his first year with a new quarterback on a new team, so he's only going to get better.
A running quarterback of all people.
Exactly that. Like, it's only going to get better for AJ Brown. Like that's. No,
I concur totally.
AJ Brown is a top 5 wide receiver. Fine if you got him at 6. I can't quibble that. Like, I can't quibble you getting. I can't see him being much. I can't get him below 6. There's no chance. I'm quite happy to take him at. For me, I'm looking at him. I'd make the argument right now. I could take him above Tyreek and Devontae Adams.
Oh, definitely, and Diggs.
100% above Diggs. Just because I think Diggs is going to get some additional competition, but he's certainly above 8.
If you're right about Kupp's injury, him and Brown and Kupp are a coin toss for me at the minute.
Right, yeah. So I think for me that's kind of where you are with this. I think but by the by, so this is what I mean. We're talking about this elite talent, and so there's a couple of reasons why I want to talk about like the decline of running backs. This is going to be a chapter in the new book, right? So when I'm looking at data from like the first half of seasons, and I'm going to get this out for the whole season, right? But the peak running back era was 2018, 2019. 2020 was a dip because of COVID, and we had a lot of players out with COVID protocols, etc. So it's a bit of an anomaly year. And then 2021, right? So in those years, so typically, if we escape 2015, which was a bit of an outlier year where there was a bit of a peak that shouldn't be, 2012 to 2017, sort of around about the average sort of points in the first half of the season, running backs were averaging, well, this is including that peak year, it was 147 points in PPR, right? So 147 points for the first half of the season. In 2018, that jumps massively to 176. 2019, it jumps to 181 points. 2020 down year, just short of 150 points, 147.6 points.
Because McCaffrey came into the league in 17. That's why.
Wow, but you had this influx of, you had him, Zeke, Henry got into gear, Kamara, all these running backs, all these elite, all these players, Fournette, all these elite players, all these elite running backs came into their own, and the coaches went into this phase of allowing the bell cows. They were more productive because they'd gone away for so many years. And what these trends are telling you here, these numbers I've given you, the reason I've given them is 2012 to 2017 was more of a committee bag, right? People used them by committee. Running backs weren't worth crap. No one was getting paid. Gurley was the standout, but there wasn't really that many. Devonta Freeman was good in parts. He had some good years. Lamar Miller, there was a few, but there weren't that many sort of standout running backs. And then you had this influx of 2 or 3 classes of elite running backs coming in who carried the load, but also became the receiving backs.
Which also probably married up with the downtime as QBs as well.
Correct. So you had this sort of down period of QBs. So they had to create concepts that allowed QBs to get the ball into the hands of running backs for more explosive plays. And then the league has caught up again. So what the league has done now is the league has caught up to defending running backs as pass catchers. So you're starting to see, yards per carry, yards per catch, yards after contact are starting to all decline as a mean across the league because defenses are getting better at defending running backs. So you're seeing less production at the running back position. So what does that mean? More production out into the slot. You're seeing people like Jefferson, Kupp,
and the evolution of the running quarterback.
Right. And
barring Michael Vick until recent times, give me a quarterback that could run the ball consistently in fantasy terms. And
there were a few. Dante Culpepper did it every now and again. There were a few, but there were sprinkling.
But this is coaching.
Right.
Offense meeting coaching defense. You've sussed that. Let's adjust. And here we are now. Athletically, the players are able to do it. So they're changing tact.
And the coaching the scheme means, it's exactly that. So things have changed. So what's happened is you've had this peak period between 2018 and 2021. Okay, caveat that slightly with 2020 was down year, but they were averaging 170 points in those 4 years for the first half of a season in PPR. Do you know what it was last season? 138.
I was going 120 if I had to guess. But go on.
Yeah, so 138 is the lowest half-season points total of the RB. So this is of the RB1. So this is the person that's leading the standings.
Yep.
It's the lowest points total since 2012.
Okay.
Then I looked at the mean. So the person playing at the RB6. So the person at the RB6 again, typically under 100 points. Then the RB6 was scoring 2018, 120 points. It duplicated exactly the same 2019. 2020 dropped to 102. 2021, 110. Then it dropped to 101.9. The mean average, so this is like for all the top 12, the mean average typically hovered around about 100 until 2016. And then it climbed slightly to 105, 106 in 2017. Then it jumps 124.7, 121.3. And it dropped a slight bit to 108 in 2020. Again, COVID year, jumps back up last year to 2021 to 114. Dropped this year to 104. So it's a 10-point drop. And again, that was the lowest mark since 2015.
Yep.
Was the RB1. And again, that same trend follows the RB2 trend. Typically was under 70 points. Then you got the spike around 2018, 74.4, 76, 81, 73. Drops again to 70. And then you're looking at mean rush attempts. So the average rush attempts of these players stays relatively consistent in terms of the amount of rushes. So typically just under 100. So even during the spike years, these running backs were only running like 98 times, 94 times, 89 in 2021 and 95. But their touches decreased, 123. And then it goes down to 116, 111 in 2021. But my point is as well, and then the yardage kind of goes flat. They had the peak years in 2018, 2017, 2019, all above 650. And then it drops to under 600 for the next couple of years. And then it's just basically all this means is that there's not touches have gone down slightly, which means there's less passing attempts. TDs have remained relatively flat. Not a huge jump, but it just means that there's less exposure. So there's yardage that's gone down. Scrimmage yardage has gone down slightly, but its touchdown efficiency and big plays have kind of gone down. And just general catches have gone down. So it's just an overall, it's a slight decline over previous years. And it's a trend that's been carrying on. 2020, there was a spike in 2021 because it was post-COVID. And then back down again. So what we're seeing, but they're not near the 2018, 2019 levels. So our strategy has been based off winning leagues in 2018, 2019, right? That was our strategy. This is how you win a league. You draft these two running backs. And then we kind of wrote off 2020 was the COVID year, kind of anything went. 2021 was a bit of an increase, but it actually wasn't anywhere near those levels. And then we've seen 2022. Yeah. Now, people will have in their head, I'm not drafting a running back in round one because they get injured. I think it's a bit of a false economy to say that. Yep. I think we have to look at it from, it's not necessarily injuries, even though a lot of the elite talent did get injured. It's actually that these players are not getting those roles. There's not that many difference makers. And if we look at the numbers again, so last year, only 4 players broke the 300-point barrier in PPR.
Oh.
And 2 of those players, and one of those players is a first-round ADP, which is Josh Jacobs. So he was 3rd. But realistically, there was only 2 different. Well, there was. You have 3 tiers here. So the first tier is Eckler and McCaffrey. Eckler was the RB1, McCaffrey the RB2. They're split by 16 points. Then you have a 48-point drop to Josh Jacobs. So between the RB2 and the RB3 is 48 points. Yep. You were getting Josh Jacobs in the late 3rd, 4th round last year.
Yep.
You had Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was a first-round pick last year. He returned you 300 points. Then you have a drop to Saquon Barkley, who was a mid-second round pick. He was at 284. And then you had Nick Chubb, who was an early second-round pick. He had 281 last year. And then you have a huge drop, right?
Yep.
So those 6 scored above 250. No one else scored above 250. The RB7, the RB7 in PPR last year was Ramondre Stevenson, 249.1. Where was he going in drafts? 8th round, 7th round, 6th round, that sort of range?
Yeah.
Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, he was next on the list. Again,
RB2.
7th, 8th round.
Backfield, that one at the time.
Right. Aaron Jones, he was high up, but again, didn't really return. Joe Mixon. And again, people are saying injuries. These guys didn't get that injured. Joe Mixon missed 2 games. Aaron Jones played them all. Tony Pollard missed week 17. Ramondre Stevenson played them all. Then you had Leonard Fournette, Jamal Williams, Najee Harris, who was a bit of a disappointment last year, Miles Sanders, Alvin Kamara.
It was a real disappointment. Yeah,
but that's what I mean. Now we're in the dudes phase, right? So when none of these guys are separating from the previous guys being drafted.
Zone, as it's commonly known.
But we're looking at point differences here. There's not big gaps. So okay,
but it's what I was going to say. So we've mentioned on here before, winning the draft is about finding positional advantages and points advantages over your competitors, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we're establishing is the differential between 1 and 12 or 5 and 10 is narrowed incredibly. So
really
where before these guys, Henry, Cook, Zeke, Barkley, CMC were kind of the first 5 names off the board because of positional scarcity and the guarantee of return that they could offer you, it isn't there anymore. It's kind of what you're getting at, right? The fact that if you don't get them, you're as likely to get 110 points from a round 3 guy as you are 120 points from a back end round 1 guy.
Right. And that's really key.
And that's not how you win drafts and leagues.
So the RB7 to the RB12, right, last year, the difference was 24 points.
Yep.
Just under 24 points. You average, basically, it's 1.4 point a game.
Yep.
Not a lot. Not enough to make any significant difference. And then when you're talking about the randomness of these finishes,
in no one had that's a 4-yard catch.
Yeah, but if you're looking at Stevenson, exactly, 4-yard catch per week. But it's the randomness of it, and this is the problem, right? Is no one's predicting Stevenson, Pollard, Jamal Williams to be top 12 players last year.
Nope.
No one predicted that. Like no one. So you've got this element of randomness. And then you've ended up spending first round, second round draft capital on Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, and they haven't separated from Ramondre Stevenson. So if you took Ramondre Stevenson in the 7th round or Tony Pollard in the 7th round, you were better
Jamal
off.
Williams in the 12th-ish, probably.
Right. You were better. Well, Jamal Williams scored less points than Joe Mixon, but only 15 points less. So less than a point a week versus what you get for your first round. And I know what people are going to say, right? So this is like, okay, well, this was last year. So let's look at the year before, right? So the year before, and again, I go about difference makers. So again, there were 4 difference makers at the position, which was Jonathan Taylor, 2021, 373 points. Austin Eckler, 343 points. Najee Harris, 300 points. They were the only 3 to break the 300 barrier, and you had Joe Mixon under them at 287, 288 points, right? Then you get this drop to the RB5 is James Conner, 257. Fournette, 255. Zeke, 252. And then it'll drop to Kamara, 234. But then you got the randomness. Fournette was a bit random. He wasn't really drafted that high. He was like a 4th round pick. James Conner was a late round pick because he was injured the year before.
6-ish,
Cordell Patterson was a random. He was basically a free agent. Josh Jacobs, third, fourth round. I mean, these guys weren't really big. And then, Nick Chubb, who was a first round pick that year, was just inside. So no, he was the RB13, was Nick Chubb. So first round pick, RB13. Yes, he missed 3 games of injury, but then we have, Damian Harris, Swift, who was a second round pick, Cook, first round pick. All these guys weren't really delivering, and they were delivering the same points as Darrell Williams and Devin Singletary, and these randoms that just, Melvin Gordon, who was basically free at that point. So my point, even AJ Dillon, who's a second player in his backfield, he's only scored 20 points less than Dalvin Cook. It's 1.3 points a week. But again, we go back to the RB6. So the RB6 was 255. And then you're looking at Josh Jacobs, 226. There's 29 points between RB7 we're looking at. So 252 and 229 and 226 is 26 points. So again, if we're following that trend, that's 1.5 points a game. And again, you mix the randomness of the players in there. So they're not separating from the rest of the pack. So RB7 to RB12 isn't separating. And that was the whole argument of why we were taking so many running backs, because they were separating from the rest of the class. We thought having a solid player was giving you that difference maker. And again, even if I go to the RB15, right? So if I go to the RB15, so I take, Zeke at 252, and I take Swift at 208.
44 points.
Yeah. Which is a little bit significant, but it's still not huge. It's only two and a half points.
Yeah.
So 2.5 points a game, which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. If you think about how many games are actually that close in fantasy football, whereas at that point, you're thinking quarterback, and we'll get on to quarterback, or wide receiver. We look at wide receiver differences. First of all, there's more wide receivers breaking the 300-point barrier than there are running backs. So there's more separated at the position, but it's also more predictable. If you look at the top players at the wide receiver position, Justin Jefferson's no one's shocked he's finished as the wide receiver 1. Tyreek Hill, no one's shocked he's finished as the 2. Devontae Adams, no one's shocked he's finished as the 3. Stephon Diggs as the 4. CeeDee Lamb as 5. AJ Brown as 6. All these players were first, second round players. The first, I'm not even going to call him a shock, because I don't think he was a big shock, was Amon-Ra St. Brown finishing as the wide receiver.
He ended the season well, didn't he?
Yeah. I don't think he started the season incredibly. He started with 20.4. Yeah, brilliantly.
Sprungboard him into this year.
I think it was like a 5th round pick, wasn't he? Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah. So he's finished the wide receiver 7. So he's outperformed. But Jalen Waddle was going early. Devonta Smith did quite well. But none of these players, Jamar Chase missed games. He would have been right up there.
He would have been,
And the first player on this list I look at as who finished as a wide receiver 1, I think was a bit of a surprise. And he's only just in, by the way, as the wide receiver 12. It's Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, I think, is the first player I look at this list and go, I don't think anyone really pegged him as having a ceiling of a wide receiver 1 player. Maybe
no,
Devonta
not based
Smith.
Off of Trevor Lawrence's play the year before.
Right. And he squeaks in as the 12. And then Tyler Lockett's there at 13. And then you've got this sort of core of McLaurin, Ayuk, Metcalf, Evans, who are all kind of all chipping. But the thing is as well, I'm going down here to Cooper Kupp. So Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver.
Well, last year?
The wide receiver 23 in PPR last year. And he still broke, missing half the season, he still broke 200 points.
Yep.
And DJ Moore finished on 199.1. So basically 200 points. So the top 24 players broke the 200-point barrier. That's not what happened in the running back position. So there's more people contributing more points. There is a slight tearing off of the wide receivers, similar to what you see with the running backs, in the sense of there's not huge separation between the wide receiver 7 and wide receiver 12, but the difference is it's the predictability of the play.
That's what I was going
to say. So wide receivers are much easier to predict. If you're looking at the ADP of the wide receivers and where they finished, there's not that many shocks on the board. Christian Kirk, there's the odd one here, but it's easy to identify who is the wide receiver 1 on their team, who is going to be the player who's going to carry that play. Wide receivers get injured less than running backs. They're more likely to produce more consistent points, and that's what we're seeing. In more consistency, they might not have those huge spike weeks, but you're seeing a lot more consistent play.
To sum it up for me, you're more likely to get an RB1 performance from a 7th round running back than you are a wide receiver 1 performance from a 7th round wide receiver.
And that's why you're the host. That's exactly it. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to dispel this myth that you need to take running backs early because
unless you're drafting with me and Murf, in which case grab the running backs, leave everyone else last, please. Yeah.
Because you're not getting that elite performance. You're not getting that elite trend of game winners because there's not that many left. Yes, if you get the opportunity to take a McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, an Eckler, absolutely. If you get and I can understand the logic of going wide receiver and then getting a Josh Jacobs in round 2. That to me makes a lot of sense. Like I get like that. I understand that. That makes logical sense to me. If a Barkley's there in round 2, then you get him.
Which is why I think someone like Barkley and Henry might just slip back into the first, because if you're drafting and it does go wide receiver heavy, I can see an argument for someone on the 10, 11, 12 turn for taking Henry and Barkley 1, 2.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I think those guys will stick around that late first, early second, because it's an alternative draft method at that stage. Yeah, and sometimes back there you need to do something a little different.
Yeah, and I could subscribe to that argument a little bit. I just think for me, I look at Barkley, right? So we look at Barkley's performance last year. So Barkley's performance, everyone's like, oh, okay, you know, Saquon Barkley, injury prone. You know, he played every game except week 18 because they would already qualify for the playoffs, right? So, you know, he played every game. He starts the season really well. So 33.4 points, 11.8, 22.6, 18.2, 19.6, 18.5, 17.5, 15.2. Then he hits the bye. 23, great, after the bye. Then he starts getting these single digits. 5.5, 15.2, 19.1 is good, 6.8, 23, 27.3, 7.3. So you start to get this really inconsistent performance towards the back end of the season where it tanks. So he was on pace to be the RB2. And then, you know, in his last 6 games, he has 3 single-digit weeks. Okay. Which, if you compare that to someone like Derrick Henry,
which is part of football season in the fantasy world, and you don't need that right then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Josh Jacobs was similar, right? So the biggest mistake, you know, Josh Jacobs was one of the most inconsistent running backs last year. So people will look at him and go, "Wow, he was the RB3, he was the rushing leader, like unbelievable season." This is Josh Jacobs' season: 8.3, 9.1, 14.7. 34.5, 30.3 bye week, 36.5. So he puts up 100 points in 3 game weeks. That's nearly a third.
How many in the 3 weeks before? Was it about 30?
22, 30, 32 points.
And he beat that in week 4 alone.
Yeah. he over doubled his total in 1 week. Yeah. So he goes from being 30. Yeah. And then, so he has that big 3-week spell and then with the bye in between, 7.4, 11.7. Right, so it goes back to being poor. Then check this out: 22.6, 19, 48.3. Do you remember that week?
Yeah.
21, 19.4, and then you're thinking, right, playoff time, baby, let's go.
Trade him. No, trade him.
13, 6, and then 19.5, and then 7 in the dead week.
So that team that's got Barkley late first, Jacobs coming back in the second, has just made the playoffs comfortably. And then battered herself.
Whereas you look at Eckler, right? And Eckler had one single digit game week. And do you know when it was? Okay. Week 18.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean he had a 13.3 weeks. Week 1 was pretty crap, 11.2. But everything else was, you know, his next lowest week was 15 in week 15. And then he had a couple of 18s and everything else was 20 plus.
Can I tell you as well, we're talking now about tier drop-offs, right? And the elite meet in the mean. That's what we've seen with wide receivers before that way. We're just seeing it now where running backs have distanced themselves and are now coming back to the pack and wide receivers time. We're going to live for another one of these in the next 2 years. That's how we're going to live for it, like it's the Titanic or something.
Yeah.
There's a position out there in a player right now where the positional advantage he offers you is incredible. And in 2 years' time, you won't have that. And I'm talking about Travis Kelce.
100%.
When Travis Kelce gives up this game, there is not a tight end you will take in the first 5 rounds of drafts, let alone the first round of a draft.
I couldn't agree more. Travis Kelce
is a real extreme of what we're saying here.
I'm now saying that Travis Kelce is worthy of probably the 106 plus.
I've got him in top 10.
Yeah. I think if you wanted to sit there and take him at the 106, I don't think I could make an argument against it, because I just think, again, that positional advantage that he gives you, and everyone's chasing that advantage. Everyone's chasing it with Pitts. Everyone's chasing it with Andrews. Everyone's chasing it with every other, you got players in this draft, with Mayer, for example. People are going to chase it. Trey McBride. People have been chasing it for years. It's not there, right? Don't chase the tight end position. It's Travis Kelce or bust for me. For me, I either take Travis Kelce in round 1 or I'm binning the position off until like round 10. It's just pointless, because you can stream the tight end position. Like it's not, there isn't enough advantage to having a significant time. Like the players you can get in round 10, Greg Dulcich is going to be a top 8 tight end this year. Evan Ingram last year, he was nothing. You're getting him in the 13th round. He comes top 5. I think he goes higher this year. I think I've written about this so many times. The people that take tight ends in rounds 4 through 7 are the people that absolutely tank their drafts, because you just waste a pick. It's an absolute waste of a really valuable pick, because there is never an elite finish that comes. Mark Andrews a couple of years ago.
2 years ago.
Is the only player in that range that has delivered a significant result and he was the tight end 1 or 2 or whatever he was. But he's the only one that's done it. He's the complete outlier. Yep. Everyone from there has not delivered a finish that's been worthy of being drafted in that selection. So for me, it's really, really simple.
As we said, right? You can find an RB1 performance in the 7th round from a running back if you hit lucky. You're not going to find a wide receiver 1 performance in the 7th round.
Absolutely
not. Certainly not going to find a tight end 1 performance in the 7th round. Ever.
No. Well, no, you will find a tight, but not the overall tight end one. The thing is, you'll find a tight end 1 performance from undrafted.
Oh
right?
yeah, of course you will.
But the problem is you won't get elite performance. But then at the same point, you're thinking, so the strategy here with the tight ends is really simple. If you're not going to get the elite player, just go with everybody else, but just pay less. It's basically like going to TK Maxx instead of going to the design. So instead of buying your Nikes from the Nike store, you buy them from TK Maxx. It's the same shoe from a different shop. You're going to just pay a different price for the same product and the same output. That's all it is. That's all you're doing. So don't spend the money. Don't spend the draft capital drafting a tight end who's going to get you 20 more points every season, because that's a point a week. It's nothing. It's not. I'll get that from the kicker. I'll get that from the DST. Like, draft the Patriots. Do you know what you should do? Right. A really simple tip here. And I'm going to blow myself up for doing this. All you need to do every year to make that points difference up is to draft one of the following 3 DSTs. Draft the Patriots,
Ravens,
the Ravens, and the Steelers.
I was going to Seahawks. Okay.
Right. Draft one of those 3 DSTs. They'll finish in the top 5 most years. And you'll make the point difference. You'll make the points per game difference up.
You will.
And you draft them in the round before the last round. So all you've got to do to make up the difference in where you're going to lose from the running backs and where you're going to lose from the tight ends.
Fine. So there's one position we haven't covered on this, and this is an outlier almost to the rule, I feel. And Stacey alluded to it earlier. Sorry, that the late round QB time is passing us by, because again, that was one where you either went early and got the elite, or like the tight end position, you punted it, you flexed it each week, you played the waiver wire and picked matchups. But I think the time's coming where the draft picks early in drafts are worth the elite QBs here now. Would you agree?
Oh, listen, 100%, right? So we need to look at this now that there are some real separators at the position. So what the late round QB, and it starts with JJ Zacharison, and we're going back a decade, right, was that the quarterback position was twofold. One, it wasn't predictable enough to get sustainable performance. Yep. So the QB1 wasn't that easy to predict. And the second thing was the QB1 actually wasn't that important a position. So I'm going back to 2013 data here, right? So you had Peyton Manning 410 points. Great season, right? Drew Brees was second, 357 points. Third was Cam Newton, 298 points. And literally the points just drop off a cliff here. And everyone's bunched up. So you had two separators at the position, and everybody else was just like everybody else. So you were drafting Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, round 1, round 2, and they weren't really doing anything for you at the position. Yep. Same goes for, well, you probably wouldn't have taken Cam Newton because he was a rookie that year, but Andrew Luck would have been high up on draft boards. He'd have been first, second round pick, ADP. I'm just picking random years now. We go to 2016. Again, you had Aaron Rodgers, 380 points, differentiator at the position. Okay. Second was Matt Ryan, 347, Drew Brees, 332, Andrew Luck, 307, Kirk Cousins, 300. We go all the way down 286, 279, 270, 270, 268, 268, 260, 259. There's no difference. So the difference between the Andrew Luck and, say, Marcus Mariota was 47 points. So, 3 points a game at QB, nothing. You're making that up in other positions. But you weren't drafting Marcus Mariota in the first, second, third round. You were drafting him undrafted probably, or somewhere very, very late. Let's look at this year. And I can go back last year and year before. Mahomes finishes just as the RB1. It's QB1, 428 points. Then you have Josh Allen, 412 points. Then you have Jalen Hurts, 384 points. Joe Burrow, 369 points. First thing is more points. QBs are scoring more. The elite players are scoring more points. The second thing is they're predictable. Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback 2. Josh Allen was the quarterback 1. They were pretty much equal. They're separated by 16 points. So 16 points over the season. You're not unhappy having, they were drafted 7-8 spots apart in ADP. You weren't unhappy having either one of those as your quarterback last year. Jalen Hurts, you would have got in the 6th round, I think, last year, 5th, 6th round. And don't forget, he missed 2 games as well. So he actually probably would have finished as the QB1 last year had he not been missing in 16 and 17. So, in fact, Josh Allen was injured in week 17 as well. So he missed time. So any one of those 3 really could have been the QB1.
They were on a par.
Yeah. Average points per week, 25.2, 24.2, 25.6. So Hurts had the biggest. Then you see a little drop here to Burrow and then Justin Fields, who were over 20 points a week. And then you've got some real outliers. And what was weird at the position was we got more injuries at QB than we have ever before. Lamar Jackson missed the end of the season. He was averaging 20 points a game before he went down. So he would have been in that elite tier. He would have been around about the 350, 360 points had he played all those games, if you factored that out. You had a couple of players down there that, Dak Prescott, he missed 5 games. He was averaging 18 points. What brings his average down as well is he got injured in the first week and then he got injured in the last week. So really he missed, or he was sat out because of playoffs. So he really missed 6 games. He'd have averaged around 20, close to that. He'd have been in that elite tier. But these were all predictable. None of these names are shocks. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Fields, a little bit, but not too much. Herbert had a down year. We'd expect him to bounce back. He only averaged 17. I'd expect him to be closer to 20 points per game than Lamar Jackson.
Where's Daniel Jones quickly on that list? Because he would be the one for me now that was the late round flyer that joined that pack.
Yeah, so him and Lawrence, him and Lawrence are the 2 here, right? And they're separated by Lawrence finished ahead of him because Lawrence played in week 18, whereas Daniel Jones didn't. So Daniel Jones had the better average, right? So for all intents and purposes, Daniel Jones finished above Trevor Lawrence, although that's not how the stats read. But they both finished around about the 300-point mark. Lawrence broke it. Jones missed it because he didn't play in week 18. Yep. So, around about 300 points. So averaging around about 18, just over 18 points a game. Along with Kirk Cousins, he was 18 points a game as well. So those 3 bringing around 18 points a game, 300 points a season. Is bringing you a nice... And those 3, the good thing about them is if you miss out on those sort of top 5 players, so Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, and Jackson, right? Then you have to look at, paying up for someone like Herbert, who had a down year, or Dak with his interceptions, or Fields. Does Fields give you a significant advantage I mean, he did average 20 points. He did miss 2 games. So maybe he does. But the point is he going to be consistent enough to deliver you that? Or are you better off holding off and taking someone like Jones, like Lawrence, like Cousins, who you're going to get in that late round? Jared Goff's not far from that conversation. Yep. He had that sort of stinker round about the bye, which really hurt him. But other than that, once he got over that, he had some good weeks after that. So again, he's averaging 17 points. But if you look at that Lawrence, Cousins, and Jones tier, they're all kind of equal for me in terms of their average points per game and output. That 300 points, they're not that far off Fields, and they're not that far off the production of, they're better, and they did better than Herbert. So is Herbert in the 5th round, if he's that ADP, much better than taking someone like Jones, Lawrence, and Cousins in the 8th, 9th, 10th round? So I think what you're seeing here is, first of all, the death of the late round QB. You have to get a QB early. I think you've got a group of 5 players that I'd be taking. For me, I could make the case of Allen being an early 2nd round pick. I can even see the argument of taking him in the 1st round in a Dynasty 1 QB. In fact, I did that in a Dynasty 1 QB. I took Allen because I just think Allen's going to give you 10 years at the position. Or 8 years at the, or 8 years. But he's going to give you 8 years at the position where you can just lock in, and you just don't have to worry about QB. Then it's done. You're done. Yeah, you're happy for the next however many years. You can kick that problem away. Yep. So then all of a sudden your rookie draft strategy becomes so much easier because you don't have to worry about QB.
One running back, and hit the jackpot.
And I think there's a value to taking him in the 1st round in a 1 QB dynasty, but that's for your show, not for mine. But my point is, I think I could make that case quite easily, and I've done it. But you take those players, and I think you can take, for me, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, wherever you get them. And I think they will hold that value because they're difference makers at the position far more than what you're going to get at running back or wide receiver at the position. And that's where you have to think about your roster construction. We're going to do lots of episodes on roster construction, how you build a good team, how you build the right team. In the book, I do about perfect round by draft, where you're finding the right values of players, looking at historical points finishes and points totals from players drafted in that position. You get this picture over time of where the right players are, but where the trends are going. So the thing with the perfect draft in the book is it's good to see the overall, but it's actually good to see the recent trends as well and follow it over the last 2-3 years. Don't trace a 1-year trend, trace a 2-year, 3-year trend, because that's the route, that's the direction of travel. That's the way we're going. So I think when you do that and you get this picture over time, you start to see very clearly, I think this is where it proves the tight end theory all along. Tight ends it's a pointless position. Scoring is not like, this is why there's a tight end premium, because the scoring is just so naff. Where Travis Kelce is effectively a wide receiver. Yeah,
go the same way as kickers.
Yeah, you have to do something to make the position interesting. And I think, with quarterbacks, it's just fascinating that we've gone from this trend and then we're getting more good quarterbacks into the league. So there's more and more. It's becoming a passing league. You've got to think about the rule changes. They're doing everything they can to give the quarterbacks time to make plays because that's what sells tickets.
Protecting them in the pocket,
Protect them in the pocket. We've got the, roughing the passer, all these new penalties that are coming in that are penalizing the defense as much as possible so that the quarterbacks can make plays. It's a passing offense.
And they're that valuable to organizations now that teams are protecting them. They don't want Josh Allen getting hit on a 2nd and 5 when they can run somebody else and keep him for the goal line. It's all it hurts. Look at the rugby style approach with Hurts. Yes, that was a quarterback sneak where ordinarily you'd see Brady go low and 20 people pile on top of him. He was a master at it. But that was a quarterback sneak designed to protect Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Everybody went in around him, shadowed him, covered him, and just eked him over the line.
And I think that's you've got to look at the way that the game is changing. And then we're going back to separators at the position, right? So you're getting a quarterback who gets 20 points a game. Not that many quarterbacks getting 20 points a game. Or you're drafting Dalvin Cook in the 1st round who's getting 14 points a game. Dalvin Cook only finished as high as he finished because he did something he's never done before and played every game in a season. He broke the record of actually managing to play every game in a season. Because there was a whole reason I would never draft Dalvin Cook. It was like, he goes missing in the playoffs.
That's why you picked Zeke. We said this last season. We picked Zeke over him.
Because he always goes missing in the playoffs. And actually, week 15, he had a fantastic week, and then he went missing in the playoffs, 10.7, 6.4. But regardless, we're looking at 14-point average is what he achieved. I mean, 14-point average. Najee Harris, 13.1. You were drafting him in the 1st round last year. Alvin Kamara, you're drafting him in the second round, 14.1 point average. And then you're drafting, you're getting players like Kenneth Walker, who was going in the 8th round, 7th round, 13.5 points per game. Jerick McKinnon, who was basically free, who did nothing for the first half of the season. He still averaged 11.5, and he did nothing in the first half. His best points total until week 9 was 9.6. Yep. Like, he did nothing. And then you drafted DeAndre Swift, 7th round, or 2nd round, 13.7. Zeke Elliott, 4th round, 12.4. And then, all these players just doing absolutely nothing. Damian Pierce got 12.8, and he didn't play the last 4 games. Yeah. These sorts of players who just didn't do. This is my point. Is you just have these difference makers, and they're not there at the running back position. You've got genuinely 4. You could throw Henry in there, Barkley maybe 4 or 5 guys. But even then, I don't think I'm paying up for Henry or Barkley. But you've got 4 or 5 guys who are difference makers at the position. And maybe you want to be kind and throw Chubb in there. I'm not so sure. Maybe he gets better but his age is starting to be a concern. Yeah. And then everyone else is a bit meh. So don't pay up for the Mixons and the Cooks and the Kamaras of this world. Just go and try and hit the late round guys. You're better off taking 4 or 5 guys and then going from there. So, I think that pretty much covers it up. But look, it's just some interesting theories. I thought it'd be good to.
It was good, yeah.
Look at these trends in 2022 and put some context. And also, if you disagree, love to hear it. Love to see the strategy where you're thinking differently. Maybe you see something I don't see. That's very possible. In fact, probable. Get in touch, and make your case, because I'd love to hear it. But for me, I just look at the data and I look at what I see, and this book this year is going to be completely almost different compared to the first one, because it's almost going to turn it on its head. But then that's the evolution of fantasy football. If you don't evolve your strategy and you play the same way, you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years, but you're not going to be consistently good because you're chasing the wrong players and the wrong stars. Yep. Whereas by evolving your strategy, and I've evolved my strategy and I evolve it every single year, become a better player, go deeper in big tournaments, you go a long way to winning prizes and money and whatever it is that you
bragging rights,
whatever it is, right? So, I love chatting this sort of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that I love, and breaking down strategy and looking at trends. And the book's going to have a load of it. Hopefully, it'll be out by June 1st. That's the goal.
Awesome.
Well, I think we end it there because we promised. I think we delivered a lot more than we said we would.
We started out with a lot to add on, didn't we? So it's taken us a little bit over runtime, but I have to say I love that sort of stuff as well. And hey, you get Stocks back, the master of strategy, to talk with as well. I'm going to be joined by Hannah, who, if anyone knows Hannah loves looking outside the box and thinking strategy as well. So long-term dynasty and Hannah and myself should be some really good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to hearing what you guys come up with and what you do going forward. And you've got my support, Stocks support, and everyone's support here to take off. And exciting times ahead for the new frontier. If you've tuned in and enjoyed, and this is your first show, second show, thanks very much for tuning in. Really appreciate the support. I hope you're back next week. I will have someone with me. Don't know who yet, but it'll be exciting. In fact, you know what? If you've got a request, stick it to me on Twitter. Maybe tag them in as well. If you've got a request, tag them in, tag me in, and I'll say, hey, look, you're in demand, and I'll grab you. But if not, I promise you I'll get someone worthy of the discussion.
My Twitter handle's here.
Dan's Twitter handle's there, so make sure you punk Dan and get him back on. But it's going to be exciting times ahead. Thank you very much for tuning in. Dan,
thanks, Murf.
I'm going to let you do the sign off, my man, because it's your last one. You got to do the sign off this week.
Yeah, Murf, actually, thanks for the seat. It's been awesome. Stocks it's the only person I could hand it back to is Stocks. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with again. I'm excited of what's to come. Join me next Tuesday from 8 on the 5 Yard Dynasty Show. Murf's back sometime next week with somebody. And until then, keep rushing.